This is Judy with All True Crime ASMR. And tonight I'm going to be doing a very special case to me. This is the case of the Camp Scott murders. So, because it is true crime, I just want to put it out there that nobody under the age of 14 should be watching this, and anybody who really has any sensitivity to anything with murder, children, and just there's everything you can possibly think of in here: rape, sexual assault, violence. This is a very disturbing case. I deliver my content in an ASMR style. That does not mean I am being disrespectful or rude to the victims. Actually, it's quite the opposite. I feel that delivering in a calm, quieter tone, I can retain the content better. I can understand what is going on better. And it's just, my heart isn't racing a mile a minute when it's over. So, I just wanted to go ahead and say that it will be a whispered video the whole time. And some clicky, funny, weird noises will come out of my mouth. So, June 1977, Camp Scott, Oklahoma, in Tulsa, to be exact. 3 little girls lost their lives, and to this day there has been many but nothing concrete. And the 2 main suspects in this case are deceased, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean that they were the ones that did it. specifically zip up a child into their sleeping bag after you raped and bludgeoned them to death and choked them, strangled them. That is to me that seems like the signature. It's just my personal opinion. I don't know if it has anything to do with it or not. But I do know that this camp's got a case. There were a lot of red flags that could have prevented this from happening. The camp director had seen somebody walking along the grounds a couple days, like 5 days before. The campers had arrived with that he did not know, and there was 410 acres. This is not something that you would just stumble onto, this piece of property, because it wasn't surrounded by anything either. And he saw him walking around with kind of a half-filled water jug or some kind of liquid in a jug. Then there was 2 weeks prior to the campers coming, they had kind of like a preliminary camp meeting and kind of a practice, run where campers would go and the counselors, where would they sleep, and just to really have everything organized, well organized. During this time, there was a note that said 3 campers will die from 10 to 1. Well, if you look at the layout of the camp tents, you can see that tent 8, 7, or 1 could be mistaken for one or the other. So they thought it was the director thought it was a joke. But then the director's husband had found, or the maintenance man had found, that one of this is probably a couple months before the campers came, that one of the tents had been slashed 5 times, kind of a square pattern. And $58 was missing, and some glasses, or so the story goes. Because by this time, everybody's looking, to me, everybody's looking a little suspect here. For one, why wouldn't you take a threat like that? 3 campers will die in tent 1. Seriously. I mean, if I owned a camp with little girls coming to Girl Scout, why would you not take that seriously? But I guess they needed the money to buy more land and, fund the Girl Scouts, that they just didn't want to interrupt who's coming. I guess that's my guess. So that is kind of the prelogue to this story. It is a story full of, obviously, murder, horrific murder. But it is also a story that is full of racism, finger pointing. There are so many guilty parties in this, and really, unfortunately, who suffered are the families. And I don't know, it just broke my heart when I heard this for the first time. I just couldn't stop listening to it and researching it and reading about it. I don't know June 13th at 11:45, Richard Guse, father of Michelle, received a call at work from his wife, Georgianne. His wife, Georgianne, said nothing more than, "Our daughter is dead." He came rushing home, obviously, and they sat there and waited together for several hours until they heard the news about how their daughter was murdered. On Sunday, June 12th at 2 p.m., they had put their daughter on a bus to Camp Scott, thinking that she was going to be taken care of, having a great time, laughing. They woke up that morning, they had gone to work. They never even probably thought about it. They're like, "Oh, our daughter's having a great time." Michelle had actually gone the year before, so she was really excited to go back again. She was turning 10 years old, July 22nd, and they had actually bought her a bike, which she never got to ride, and they were going to celebrate the day when she got back after 2 weeks. You would never think in a million years that you'd send your kid up to Girl Scout camp and have them tragically murdered. So, the first thing that the Guses did was call their other family members and tell them the terrible news of obviously what happened to her. And they met with their minister, and they would go through the steps of selecting a funeral home, making arrangements, and establishing a memorial fund instead of flowers. Now they got really involved in, helping families that had suffered similar fates to theirs, lost children in a violent way. So afraid that they would never see their daughter again, they wanted to see her body. So, Wednesday morning, June 15th, the medical examiner released her body to the funeral home, where Mr. and Mrs. Guse would finally be able to see their daughter for the last time that Wednesday night. They had 10 wonderful years with Michelle. She wanted to be a math teacher like her mother. Richard, Georgianne, and their son, Mike, 13, Michelle's brother, said their final farewells at her memorial service held at Marlin Funeral Home of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, June 17th, 1977. Still in Guse's attic, Michelle's sleeping bag and other possessions from the camp are stored. Michelle's room remains much the same, including her prized African violets. The family, while dealing with the stages of grief, became members of the Oklahoma Crime Victims Compensation Board. And so they actually organized the local chapter for parents who had lost their children. They felt that working with other cases and other people that have suffered similar fates would be much healthier than just sitting around feeling angry and crazy and resentful. And it helped them stay together as a family because they had a son to raise. Michelle, Heather Guse, 9 years old, was an excellent student. She got straight A's in school. She loved playing on the soccer team during 4th grade. She was a member of the local Girl Scout JJ troop number 624 in Broken Arrow. So, on the first night of camp, like I said, it was storming so bad outside, and all these 3 little campers were together, and they're like huddled up, and they were told, everybody was told to go back into your tents because it was so bad, the storm, lightning and thundering right after dinner. So these girls go, and they're all excited to ride back to their families. It's their first night there, and they're excited to meet new friends, and I can just feel their excitement because I remember that excitement. And Michelle wrote a letter to her Aunt Karen, and she told her how, there was actually this little girl was brilliant. She was actually the youngest of all of them, and Laurie wrote a letter as well, and she just said that she had met all these friends, and she was really about the storm, and she was happy to, she couldn't wait to get back to her tent and write to them. And the thing is that her mother, and she couldn't decide upon, they were kind of arguing back and forth on which camp she would go to. So Laurie said, I don't care as long as you pick. So her mother actually picked Camp Scott. Can you believe it? It's a decision that you would never forgive yourself for, even though she had nothing, it was not her fault at all. She would have had no way of knowing. But what a choice. Oh gosh, oh, that's so sad. Laurie's mom still wears Laurie's heart-shaped gold ring on her own little finger to keep her close. She is quick to correct anyone who says she only has four children, because they have 5. They never ever leave Laurie out. Together as a family, they had learned to cope with Laurie's brutal death. The Farmer family still feels the Girl Scout Council should have been held accountable for the girls' safety and what happened to them. I totally agree. I won't get into that. Laurie Farmer, 8 years old, she was so well liked, and what a sweet little personality. Her father describes her, and this makes me smile, as an exceptional and bright child who at 16 months suddenly recited the Pledge of Allegiance flawlessly, and then 2 months later she was 18 months, recited the entire, it was the night before Christmas. I can't even do that today. By the time Laurie was 2 years old, she could work a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle. Later, she would skip the 2nd grade after testing, so she had an IQ of 130. That's brilliant. And a mental age of 10 in the 2nd grade. So Laurie's 9th birthday would have been Sunday, June 19th, 1977. Just 6 days after her first day at camp, and 5 days after she was killed. The Farmer family had planned to come to the camp the day of her birthday, so they all would celebrate together. Can you believe that? She was only 8 years old. Brilliant. What a brilliant child. So far these 2 kids are just, they're so sweet and so bright, and they really enjoy being there together, except for Doris. But let's finish Laurie's story. Laurie would be the first to be buried June 15th, 1977. Laurie's memorial was held at Asbury Methodist Church. She was buried at Memorial Park Cemetery in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Born June 18th, 1968, and died June 13th, 1977. That breaks my heart. Okay, it says here, it should be noted that Bonnie Brewster, director of the Magic Empire Council, accepted the position of director in 1974. On June 13th, 1977, Mrs. Brewster received the phone call early Monday morning that there had been a tragedy at Camp Scott. Soon after, she and her husband headed to the camp to determine what had happened. While in the director's office at Camp Scott, unbeknownst to Bonnie, her husband Ralph started suffering. His eyes an interview with Doris's mother, Betty Milner, said she had been able to visit her daughter's grave since the funeral. She said she cannot go and visit her because of what happened to her daughter. She says that it wasn't necessarily sadness, it was more an intense fear, the shock knowing the child she had given birth to, helped and loved her for 10 years, had something so horrible happen to her. Items Denise had taken with her to camp were sealed in a box in a closet in the home because it was part of her daughter. In Betty's Bible is the never mailed letter Denise wrote at camp. In the letter that Denise told her mom that she was not happy. She didn't like the camp and how it had been raining. She also told her mother that she did not want to stay for 2 weeks. Now, Denise had been really close to her mother, and she had kind of vacillated between, no, I don't want you to go because you're gonna come home, because she'd even come home if she would spend the night at a friend's house. But Denise wanted to go so badly, she harassed her mom, and harassed her until finally Betty said, okay, you have to stay. And then as the time got closer, she didn't want to go. All of a sudden, a week before, she was like, Mommy, I don't want to go. And her 5-year-old sister said, as they were leaving, do you think there's life after death, Mommy? She says, what? She said, I'm just wondering, because I think Denise isn't gonna come back. Something like that. It's just, her mom was like, oh, don't be silly. That's just you being upset because your sister's upset. Her sister was crying and freaking out. She didn't want to go. So Betty, in 1987, said she no longer thought about Denise daily except around the anniversary of the murder and Christmas. I don't know if I could go a day without thinking about my daughter. And this is when she laughs and visits the people she shows in herself that she will never be the same person she once was. Denise Miller is 10 years old, sold Girl Scout cookies to friends, neighbors, and relatives, and finally saved enough money for her trip to camp. Doris's principal said she was one of the nicest little girls you'd ever want to talk with, described by teachers as a model student who received straight A's in the 4th grade and had been honored for having the highest achievement and best study habits in her class. Betty described her daughter as an extremely friendly little girl who loved people, and anywhere we went, she always made friends. Beautiful little girl. Denise taught herself how to read and write at the age of 4, and anytime she had questions about anything, she would go to the library herself and look it up through the Dewey Decimal System. She was especially interested in tap dancing, skating, and gymnastics, and studied each of those skills. She was a child that wanted to do so much and just tried to do everything she could. Betty and Denise dearly loved her younger sister, who was 5 at the time of Denise's death. Division North. Milner, who was preceded in death by his 10-year-old daughter, Doris, was buried next to her. So like I said before, this was a very large camp. There was 410 acres. Named in honor of H. and J. Scotty and Florence Scott, who were both Tulsa Boy and Girl Scout volunteers. They donated 24 acres in 1928 for the core of the camp to open, and by selling those Girl Scout cookies, they kept every year buying more and more land till they got their 410 acres. So those Girl Scouts, I'll tell you, they are tenacious little girls, every one of them. In 1956, Girl Scouts planted thousands of pine trees throughout the camp. 1962, the Tulsa Citizen Club underwrote the construction of Camp Scott's Great Hall facility, and the materials needed for the building would come from the cookie sales. I mean, these girls are awesome salespeople, and I think that is one thing that I do really like about the Girl Scouts, is that they not only teach them how to be good people and good citizens, but they teach them very, very useful skills in life, how to sell, how to, face their fears, how to, really deal with other people, and I really give them a lot of credit for that. And every one of the girls I've ever known that was a Girl Scout, grew up in, it's very good all around, really. So, after all of these red flags, they still allowed all these kids, these little girls, to come and stay at the tent. You would think, and what really upsets me, I guess, about this part, and I'm gonna end here for this evening, and I will put pictures, but I guess what bothers me the most, and this will be a multi-part production, because I really, truly love, it fascinates me. The heart of it fascinates me, keeping their spirit alive, keeping them alive, because they were people, they were loved so much, they were so intelligent. I mean, every one of them, and it was just heartbreaking to listen to this case for the first time, and then I just had ordered the book, and I've been I can't even tell you, gone through so many theories. This has never been we found room for you. Come on. And that little girl got very lucky. And it's as expressed the kindness and friendship that she had attained from these three girls in the just a few hours that she was with them. And she feels very lucky to have been part of their lives, even if it was a small part. There was another little girl that, because the camp was cleared out when all of this was brought to light, and we'll talk about more about this tomorrow, but there was this one little girl trying to get her stuff, and I don't know if she didn't hear her name or just kind of got behind, but all the parents were told to come get their children the day after they dropped them off. So here are these frantic parents coming to pick all these little girls up, and they're praying to God. Nobody knew whose child it was. So, I mean, these parents are just praying to God that it's not theirs. And this one little girl calls, or this woman later in life said that she remembers she had gotten behind, and it took her a while because they had to bus them in and bus them out. I guess it was a long drive, and I kind of remember that too. At Camp Wainoa, not so much Camp Christopher, but Camp Wainoa was very, very large, and they dropped us off at the front, and we would have to be, we'd either have to walk this long walk with all of our suitcases, or they would actually, drive us back to our cabins so we could get settled in. And this one little girl remembers that the look on her mother's face just about broke her heart when she saw the panic. I mean, the panic look that, oh my God, my daughter's name's been called 2 or 3 times. And I don't know if she couldn't get off the bus quick enough or what, but her mother started to freak out, and she's crying. And she runs up to her and she's like, Mom, I'm right here, I'm right here. And I can't even imagine the relief that a parent would feel. I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine the relief. I mean, thinking that you don't know anything about what is going on. And then your daughter does not come running out, gets stuck behind or whatever, and you're thinking, oh my God, it's my kids, it's my kids. But we will get into more of that tomorrow, and who the suspects are, how they were killed, and that is a very brutal. I just wanted to kind of dedicate today to going over how wonderful the victims were, how smart, how beautiful, how intelligent, and how, really led up. I believe that the camp's negligence really led up to their deaths. They could have really done a lot more, and they knew something was going on, whether it was a prank or not. I mean, these are little girls. You don't not take that seriously. I would imagine. I don't know. I just thought that was really strange that they wouldn't take more of a responsibility for what had happened, knowing all the things they knew prior, having all kind of the clues building up, and it even actually put on the ground. They are not actually tents that close. They have doors. There is always a camp counselor with them. They have it just structured. There's a fence around all the camps. There's, private property, barbed wire fence. I remember that. I can remember that from Camp Wainoa just being really, and it wasn't all that. It was probably 5 or 6 years after this happened that I started going to sleepaway camp, and they were very vigilant back then about making sure that, wherever you are, they could see you, or somebody was with you going to the bathroom. There wasn't even a buddy system. There was senior counselors, there was, junior counselors, there were senior campers that were 16, 17, they were older, they would be with you. And you'll see in the next video that really the counselors, they just, I guess, also really bothers me is that the one youngest was the youngest in all of the troops. And she should have had at least somebody there, I think, because she was the youngest in the entire camp, the youngest of the girls to go to the camp, Michelle.